Ladies and gentlemen, once again, the ceremony will begin momentarily. Please take your seats and silence all electronic devices. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, please take your seats. The ceremony will begin momentarily. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our honored guests, members of the United States Congress and the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives. Ladies and gentlemen, the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable Paul D. Ryan.
Afternoon, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the United States Capitol. And I want to thank you for braving the elements to get here. Since America's earliest days, every Congress has had this very happy privilege to present a gold medal in recognition of extraordinary deeds. There is no higher honor that we can bestow here in Congress. Today, pursuant to S. 2234, we will present the medal to the members of the Office of Strategic Services for their indispensable contributions to victory in World War II. The men and women of the OSS have never been collectively recognized for their heroism until this moment. We are so fortunate to have with us here a number of living veterans of the OSS. As we begin our ceremony, please join me in welcoming these American heroes.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the presentation of the colors by the United States Armed Forces Color Guard, the performance of our national anthem, and the retiring of the colors.
You see, by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing as the Chaplain of the United States Senate, Dr. Barry Black, gives the invocation.
Let us pray. O Lord, God of hosts, you stretch out the heavens like a curtain. With your eternal wisdom and love, you continue to protect this land we love. Lord, we praise you for this opportunity to honor the Office of Strategic Services. We're grateful for this intelligence service, a predecessor of the modern Central Intelligence Agency, and for those who serve so faithfully in it. Lord, you blessed them to coordinate espionage activities during World War II for all branches of the American Armed Services. We thank you for using OSS to develop innovative communication equipment that helped bring about the defeat of the Axis powers. May your providential leading of the Office of Strategic Services remind us that you still rule in the affairs of humanity. Hasten the day when weapons of war will be no more, and when justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Bless this Congressional Gold Medal ceremony. We pray in your great name. Amen.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, United States Representative from the 5th District of Ohio, the Honorable Robert E. Lata.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here today. Today is a day that we've worked hard for many years, and we're here to honor and recognize these brave veterans who Tom Brokaw proclaimed members of the greatest generation for their sacrifice, superior service, and major contributions during World War II. As you all know, the Office of Strategic Services was America's first effort to implement a system of strategic intelligence during World War II and provided the basis for the modern-day American intelligence and special operations communities. Under the leadership of OSS founder, General William J. Wild Bill Donovan, the OSS conducted acts of great bravery and accomplished feats of which many would have deemed impossible during the war, and their efforts were another factor in the Allied victory in World War II. Let me highlight one veteran who is no longer with us, but truly was a member of the greatest generation, Arthur Art Jibilian, who was known as Jibby to his friends, passed away 8 years ago today. His daughter Debbie was able to join us from Ohio, but is watching from the live stream. During World War II, Jibby was a Navy radio operator who volunteered with the OSS and participated in the largest successful rescue mission of 513 downed airmen behind enemy lines in Yugoslavia, a mission codenamed Operation Halyard. Jibby stayed behind mission after mission during Halyard until the last airman was rescued on December 27, 1944. Jibby and the other veterans that served through the OSS have earned and deserve this recognition. They truly did attempt the impossible and dare the unknown. Congress and our nation are proud of you, and we are grateful for your dedicated service. This Congressional Gold Medal is one way that we can, as a grateful nation, say thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, United States Representative from the 9th District of Ohio, the Honorable Marcy Kaptur.
Good afternoon. Thank you, distinguished guests, service members, as well as the families of the Office of Strategic Services who join us. It is my deep honor to pay tribute with this Congressional Gold Medal to the valiant, elite, superior soldiers from all military branches who served in the clandestine OSS during World War II, the 20th century's time of greatest testing. Today's long overdue recognition comes 71 years after their gut-wrenching sacrifices for us. Here in Liberty's home, America finally honors these fine patriots. Our family's beloved Uncle Tony, Army Corporal Anthony Rogowski of Toledo, Ohio, our mother's brother, served valiantly in the OSS from 1942 to 1945. Awarded a Bronze Star. Never bragging, he told stories of parachuting at night down to battle in foreboding jungle warfare in Burma. Technically, he was classified as a driver, describing the road conditions as pure hell. And I read his words. To be frank with you, the roads are pure hell. When it is dry, you can't see 10 feet in front of you. And when it rains, you have a job on your hands, keeping the truck on the road. The roads are mostly rock and clay. And brother, when the rain falls, it's going out on a steering wheel and a prayer. I'm not kidding you a bit. The highest mountain we climbed was 14,800 feet, and it was during the rain. All in all, we crossed about 25 mountaintops on our run. We have to drive like hell to make 100 miles. One place we only make about 90 miles in 10 hours and burn about 50 gallons of gas doing it. So that gives you about 1.5 miles to a gallon of gas. On the whole run, we average pretty close to 2 minutes to 2 miles to the gallon. Our run is about 2,800 miles, and most of the road is rough, and we have about 300 miles of smooth road on the run. On our last trip, we had 10 trucks and broke 18 springs on them. I didn't break any of mine, but I did have 12 flats. His home, Toledo, dubbed Jeep City, should be proud, as Uncle Tony wrote in 1945. One thing that outlasts anything around here is Willie's Jeep. They outrun all the other vehicles by a long run, and boy, can they take a beating. Like many others, we still today do not exactly know where he and the other 12,999 Americans served. His letters back home were censored. He simply wrote China atop his letters home. It is likely he served building either the Burma or Lato Road, probably near the famous OSS Detachment 101. Their grit made possible the entry of Chinese and American forces to fight against Imperial Japan, and like Tony, many of these extraordinary Americans went unrecognized until today. Even when I inquired with the National Defense Personnel Center about Tony, they stated, "The veteran is not in our files." Far too many of his OSS compatriots, unknown to history, paid the ultimate price for liberty. Others came back wounded. Many vets were haunted by memories from the battles in which they had been engaged. Uncle Tony was stabbed in a foxhole by Japanese infantrymen. He later contracted malaria and suffered for years until his early death at age 57. May I ask his family, who is here today, his daughter Roseanne, his granddaughters Carrie and her husband John Adler, their daughter and son Abby Rose and Andrew, and granddaughters Kelly and Kristen, to stand. They are in the audience with us today. As we elevate these valiant warriors of the OSS into their deserving place in history, may the envisioned OSS Museum allow for their full expression by our grateful nation. Today, we officially imbue American history with fuller meaning. This gold medal ceremony, long overdue, awards our patriots the nation's honor they have richly earned. It has been written, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, and I would add, truth and gratitude are our gifts to them. Onward, America, onward, liberty.
Ladies and gentlemen, United States Senator from Missouri, the Honorable Roy Blunt.
Thank you all. Well, I guess we shouldn't be surprised that a little weather wouldn't keep the veterans of the OSS away today, or their family and their friends. So many challenges met in so many wonderful ways. It's great for us and an honor for us to be here with you, to recognize what you did, to remember what you did. It was certainly a privilege for me to be able to be one of the co-sponsors of the Congressional Gold Medal, along with my friend Senator Warner and my former House colleagues, Congressman Lata and Congresswoman Kaptur. You know, at its peak, the OSS had about 13,000 people in late 1944. Its founder, Wild Bill Donovan, who, by the way, will be celebrated in song as only Mark Russell could celebrate someone in song. But Wild Bill Donovan said that the OSS personnel conducted some of the bravest acts of the war. And when you think about what the OSS was asked to do, what several of you were able to do, the establishing an intelligence network behind enemy lines, developing resistance and rescue efforts that saved lives and frankly shortened the war, mercy missions after the war to try to get to POW camps and to access prisoner camps before anybody else got there, to be sure that the right things happened as people were leaving those camps and leaving the prisoners that they had held in many cases for so long. Clearly the OSS, the forerunner of the CIA, 4 of the directors of the CIA were members of the OSS. Alan Dulles, Richard Helms, William Colby, William Casey, all learned what they practiced in such an effective way as members of the OSS. Other members, Arthur Goldberg, who served on the Supreme Court, Arthur Schlesinger Jr., the historian, John Ford, the filmmaker. You wouldn't want to leave out Julia Child, as it turns out, a unique part of the OSS history, and William Clark, who will speak today, and others who are here today to be honored. Vigilant in a dangerous world, that area of vigilance, that willingness to dare to do great things to defend liberty is found nowhere better in the history of our country than the OSS. And again, what a privilege for us to be here to honor this institution and those people who served in it, who are here today, their families and their friends.
Ladies and gentlemen, United States Senator from Virginia, the Honorable Mark R. Warner.
It is also an honor for me to join with my colleagues to honor the men and women who made up the OSS. And as my friend Roy Blunt said, even if the federal government shut down and all the schools shut down today, you guys are all still here. Think back, I guess, 75, 76 years ago, summer of 1942, when in many ways the fate of our country hung in balance. The threat of the Nazis, the threat of the Japanese, and an individual I would have loved to have met, Wild Bill Donovan, came with an idea to President Roosevelt about putting together a group of brave individuals that would serve in a non-conventional way to try to bring the war to an end. Those OSS volunteers volunteered to jump in when, frankly, America needed them, and they answered the call without hesitation. Now, sometimes hearing the stories of those veterans makes you realize that the Hollywood movies have nothing on what those men and women did during World War II. I'd like to call out 2 from the Commonwealth of Virginia. One was a veteran from Woodstock, Virginia, OSS pilot John Billings, who volunteered for a risky nighttime mission to fly a 3-man OSS team deep into Nazi territory. These, in effect, the folks that they were letting out were the real, excuse my language, inglorious bastards who parachuted into the Austrian Alps, posing as German officers. And then Lieutenant Billings navigated his B-24 Liberator at a low altitude and was able to get those guys down and then get out safely. Another was Arthur Reinhardt, also from Virginia, who served as a radio operator, cryptographer, and part of a 2-man secret team who served behind lines in China, who's also here. There are many people to thank, but I want to particularly thank the OSS Society. This act shouldn't have taken this long, but your diligence, your commitment, and now the fact that the OSS veterans and their families and those who passed will be honored with the highest civilian honor, the Congressional Gold Medal. That day has finally arrived. Congratulations on your service, and congratulations for all who helped make this happen. Thank you all very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, political humorist Mark Russell.
As you were. How many here are from Buffalo? Anybody here from Buffalo? I'm from Buffalo, and I have a winter home there. A winter home, and that's okay. The best description of the OSS that I ever heard was that the OSS is a group of very dangerous senior citizens. Now, when those dangerous senior citizens ask you to jump, you just salute and say how high, and that's why I am here. You guys are the salt of the earth, you OSS veteran. You are the real deal. I've overheard your conversation a little while ago, right? Well, in the old days, we would have taken out Assad by now. Yes, indeed. And so, I am here to honor a man from Buffalo. And long before Tim Russert or Jack Kemp or me, there was this man. And I've done nothing. I was in the Marine Corps, yes, it was during the Korean War, the forgotten war. I never forgot. I was wounded in that war. It was in Tijuana, but I was wounded. So I have nothing. I have nothing to brag about. I'm here to salute the man. General William J. Donovan. He was known as Wild Bill. An Irish lad from Buffalo with a mission to fulfill. He won the Medal of Honor in the First World War, but that was just a rehearsal for what would be in store. He then became a lawyer. That was back in the day. We won't hold that against him. No one's perfect, as they say. As war clouds gathered with all Europe in distress, intelligence was needed. So they formed the OSS. With the Office of Strategic Services, the Allies would be saved. And while Bill Donovan helped put Hitler in his grave, the OSS became the CIA to carry on the fight against the flak from the enemy. Congressional oversight. You can draw a line from Donovan to the CIA, which led to the Navy SEALs at Abbottabad just to serve bin Laden's dead. There are unnamed stars on Langley's wall, enshrined in secrecy. And with Wild Bill Donovan, they kept our country free. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Democratic leader of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi.
Friends and colleagues, good afternoon. Mark Russell, wow, wasn't that great? Wasn't that great? Oh, no. Thanks for putting me behind Mark Russell in the speaking order, whoever did this. Let me begin by thanking my colleagues, Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur, Congressman Bob Lata, Senator Mark Warner, Senator Roy Blunt, and Senator Angus King for their tireless effort to make today possible. Thank you. And what an honor it is for all of us to join them in welcoming you under the leadership of our Speaker, Speaker Ryan, and our leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell. We're pleased to welcome you. Thank you, and especially thank Charles Pink and William Clark, whom we'll be hearing from later, as representatives of so many of you and your families who are here today. We know that this gold medal ceremony is particularly meaningful for Marcy Kaptur, whose uncle Tony proudly served in the Office of Strategic Services. Marcy, thank you for sharing his words with us today. It made it so special. To the heroic veterans of the OSS, thank you for your extraordinary service on behalf of the Allied cause. We are so blessed by the honor of your presence here today. As the longest-serving member of the Congressional Intelligence Committee, I know very well, but couldn't possibly know as well as you, how great your contribution was to the success of America in World War II. And so my personal privilege to welcome you on behalf of many of my colleagues, or many House colleagues and Senate colleagues who are here today. And in intelligence, and when we're, especially in some years gone by, force protection was the purpose. Many other things in order to scout, to prevent our troops from getting into danger, to protect our troops. So not only did you perform your own heroic duties, you saved endless lives. Endless lives. That makes us all so very proud. I hope you take great satisfaction in the recognition that everyone knows what you did. For too long, the contributions of the patriots of the OSS has been shrouded in secrecy. It's the nature of the business. Your heroism hidden from the public, the American public. Together, today, we gather in Emancipation Hall to shine a bright light on the exceptional valor and superior service of these men and women. By bestowing the highest civilian honor the U.S. Congress can give, our nation extends our most humble gratitude to you, our heroes. We celebrate your vital role in bequeathing precious liberty and preserving freedom for America and for the world. And we ensure the sacrifices, as we ensure the sacrifices that you made, the dangers you endured, the contribution that you made, and the cost to your families for your heroism and your patriotism. That will all be rightfully remembered and recorded in the pages of history. During the darkness of World War II, the men and women of the OSS fought bravely, men and women fought bravely, brilliantly, and broadly. Across the world, in Nazi Germany and on the beaches of Normandy and Yugoslavia, the French North Africa, and in Burma and Japan, you aided the resistance, raided enemies, and rescued prisoners of war. It's a source of great pride that 1/3 of OSS patriots were women, including Virginia Hall, one of the first civilian women to earn the Distinguished Service Cross. Virginia, a saboteur and spy, helped train 3 battalions of French resistance forces, mapped drop zones, arranged safe houses, and assisted prisoners of war in central France, all with a prosthetic leg. Her exceptional energy, ingenuity, and courage were a testament to this truth, that intrepid women were vital to the Allied victory. Yet the legacy of Virginia Hall and other OSS service members had endured far beyond the war effort. The intelligence networks and structures that they forged would lay the foundation for our post-war strength for decades to come. When OSS Director Bill Donovan passed away, President Dwight Eisenhower was reported to have said, "We have lost our last hero." Imagine being called a hero by President Eisenhower. Imagine. But Bill Donovan, Virginia Hall, and the members of the OSS were not the last heroes. They would inspire countless others to answer the call of service and sacrifice for freedom and liberty. May the OSS heroism be a lesson to us all that a few determined men and women can change the course of history, and you did just that. OSS veterans, for your brilliance, bravery, and exceptional daring, we are very grateful and very honored to bestow on you the Congressional Gold Medal. Thank you for making us worthy to bestow that honor on you by your presence here today. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, United States Senator from Maine, the Honorable Angus S. King Jr.
Some years ago, I was invited to a ceremony in a small town in northern Maine honoring a young man from that town who had fallen in Somalia and received the Congressional Medal of Honor. That ceremony, like this one today, started with the color guard and the national anthem. And I listened to the national anthem that day in a way that I never had before. I actually listened to the words and I noticed something. And it turns out, almost uniquely among national anthems and national songs across the world, our national anthem ends with a question. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? That's a question. And that question has to be answered in each generation, and I believe the answer to the question is contained in it. The land of the free and the home of the brave. As long as we are the home of the brave, we will be the land of the free. And that's the message of the last line of the national anthem. I'm especially honored to be here today because a member of my family served in the OSS, my wife's Uncle Bob. Bob Salstein from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His grandfather was an immigrant, and the family was so delighted to be in America, they named Bob's father Benjamin Franklin Salstein. BF, he was called. And Bob Salstein was in the OSS in Burma. And we've already heard about the bravery and entrepreneurialism, if you will, of OSS veterans around the world in the most dangerous missions. He was in Burma, ahead of the U.S. liberating troops, dealing with Japanese pockets of resistance, and they ended up recruiting something like 11,000 Kachin tribesmen in Burma, and they became known as the Kachin Rangers. This was OSS 101. Bob Salstein, all his life, said that his work with the Kachin Rangers, with OSS 101 in Burma, was the most important work of his life. And I would tend to agree, because he was one of the brave that enabled us to remain the land of the free. And I guess the easiest way to characterize it, particularly realizing how few people were involved in the OSS, 13,000 is the number I've been told, 35% of which, by the way, were women. 35% were women, 13,000 people. And I think the words of Churchill about the RAF apply in this case. Rarely in human history have so many owed so much to so few. So it's an honor for me to join my colleagues here today and recognize those of you who are here and those who aren't here, like Uncle Bob, for what you did for our country, for what you did for your communities, for what you did for all of us. Profound and sincere thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Majority Leader of the United States Senate, the Honorable Mitch McConnell.
As we've been hearing today, the ranks of the Office of Strategic Services included quite a cast of characters. We've heard about Wild Bill Donovan, the visionary leader intent on sowing the dragon's teeth and breeding chaos behind enemy lines. There were celebrities like Marlene Dietrich and future celebrities like Julia Child, all-star academics like Arthur Schlesinger. I'm partial to the story of Mo Berg, an Ivy Leaguer turned journeyman Major League Baseball catcher who gave up trying to hit curveballs and started throwing curveballs to the Nazis. Mo parachuted into occupied Yugoslavia, and he eavesdropped on German physicists. The history of the OSS is packed with these kinds of dramatic exploits. Saboteurs, like Colonel Frank Gleason, slowed the Japanese advance across China, demolishing hundreds of railways and bridges. Undercover operatives, like Colonel Peter Ortiz, stared down Nazi officers, laying groundwork for the Allied invasion. Pilots like Captain John Billings flew low and slow through the Austrian Alps, deploying agents behind enemy lines to hasten the war's end. These exciting tales feel tailor-made for the history books or the silver screen. And truly, this heroism did indeed make history. Its impact can't be overstated. President Eisenhower once said that even if the OSS had done nothing besides its intelligence gathering in advance of D-Day, the whole enterprise would still have been worth it. Just where did these fearless men and women come from? The Office of Strategic Services hosted more than 24,000 personnel. Some were service members, transferred from other units. Others volunteered after hearing this invitation broadcast over base loudspeakers. Here was the invitation. Wanted, volunteers for immediate overseas assignment. Likelihood of a dangerous mission guaranteed. Still others were civilians who leapt at the chance to serve. Some spent the war deep in cloak and dagger operations. Others manned radios or pored over research. Some would go on to post-war fame as statesmen and celebrities. Others returned to the richness of the ordinary American life they had just fought to defend. Like Louisville, Kentucky draftsman named Edward Becker, or a Boyd County farmhand named Wilson Barker. But altogether, they, the men and women of the OSS, are its greatest legacy. That legacy gave us the CIA, where brave Americans have continued risking everything to keep us safe. And it helped lead to the Navy SEALs, the Army Special Forces, and the Air Force and Marine Corps Special Operations Commands. Quite a family tree. But deeper than institutional history, it is the spirit of these veterans that endures. Their pluck and patriotism prove that any American could rise to defeat the foes of freedom. So it's our privilege to salute the OSS veterans present today, and our duty to give thanks to those who have passed on. How fortunate we are that these heroes answered the call.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable Paul D. Ryan.
It is now time for the presentation of the medal, a moment that I know so many of you have been working for so long. It's really incredible, isn't it? When you think about how high the stakes were and how nothing like this had ever been tried before. But Bill Donovan said, go ahead and try it. And it worked. It worked brilliantly. The OSS may seem like something out of the movies, and yes, as you have heard, some of its members were. But there are certain roles that only history can cast. What else could have brought together such far-fetched ideas and so many far-flung people together? What other enterprise would Julia Child have had in developing a recipe for shark repellent? Or Virginia Hall. This is one of my favorites. Virginia Hall, who lost her leg before the war, but still operated behind enemy lines in occupied France, transmitting messages using a radio that looked like a suitcase. Or there's Jumpin' Joe Savoldi. He played for Knute Rockne at Notre Dame. And Jumpin' Joe Savoldi was tasked with extracting secret Nazi documents from Rome. For all the household names, there are countless, countless other names that we will never know. All of these patriots worked to protect America and democracy itself. They passed on a sense of duty and daring to today's intelligence professionals. They preserved a spirit of freedom for our children. And so, for the men and women of the OSS, those glorious amateurs who struck a decisive blow to fascism, the United States Mint has struck a gold medal, which we present now on behalf of a very grateful nation.
Ladies and gentlemen, President of the OSS Society, Charles Pink.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to reveal a secret today that's been kept since World War II, what the initials OSS stand for. Oh, so snowy. I'd like to thank the congressional leadership, the bill's sponsors, and 393 co-sponsors for making this historic day possible. And I want them all to know that you've made a lot of people extremely happy and nobody unhappy, which in Washington doesn't happen that frequently. So thank you very much. No one would have been more pleased by this recognition of the OSS than its founder, General William Donovan, who, as Senator Blunt pointed out, said OSS personnel performed some of the bravest acts of World War II. And we're honored to have so many leaders from the defense, intelligence, and special operations communities here today to celebrate. I'd like to thank the U.S. Mint for designing a beautiful gold medal, and the Airmen of Note and Mark Russell for providing today's music. I think it's important to remind Americans on this historic occasion that General Donovan, a conservative Republican, and President Roosevelt, a liberal Democrat, formed a close relationship when they created the OSS to defend the United States from the greatest threat it and the world has ever faced. They established the principle that our intelligence community must be apolitical and bipartisan, which is just as important today as our nation faces myriad threats. It's my honor to accept this medal on behalf of the men and women of the OSS, including my father, Dan Pink, who served behind enemy lines in China. At the final gathering of OSS personnel on September 28, 1945, General Donovan delivered the following speech. Men and women of OSS, we have come to the end of an unusual experiment. This experiment was to determine whether a group of Americans constituting a cross-section of racial origins, of abilities, temperaments, and talents could meet and risk and encounter with the long-established and well-trained enemy organizations. How well that experiment has succeeded is measured by your accomplishments and by the recognition of your achievements. You should feel deeply gratified by President Truman's expression of purpose of basing a coordinated intelligence service upon the techniques and resources that you have initiated and developed. This could not have been done if you had not been willing to fuse yourselves into a team that was made up not only of the scholars and research experts and of the active units and operations and intelligence who engaged the enemy in direct encounter, but also of the great numbers of our organization who drove our motor vehicles, carried our mail, kept our records and documents, and performed those other innumerable duties of administrative services without which no organization can succeed, and which, because well done, made our activities that much more effective. When I speak of your achievements, that does not mean that we did not make mistakes. We were not afraid to make mistakes because we were not afraid to try things that had not been tried before. All of us would like to think that we could have done a better job. But all of you must know that whatever the errors or failures, you've done an honest and self-respecting job. But more than that, because there existed in this organization a sense of solidarity, you must also have the conviction that this agency, in which you played a part, was an effective force. Within a few days, each one of us will be going to new tasks, whether in civilian life or in governmental work. You can go with the assurance that you have made a beginning by showing the people of America that only by decisions of national policy based upon accurate information can we have the chance of a peace that will endure. It's now my honor to introduce William Clark, who was a veteran of the OSS and CIA. During World War II, he served in India and in Ceylon with OSS Detachment 404. While with CIA, he was attached to the United Kingdom's Ministry of Defense's Joint Intelligence Bureau in London, and he also served as a technical advisor to NATO's Coordinating Committee. Mr. Clark.
Members of Congress, members of the OSS Society, and especially those veterans of the Office of Strategic Services that are here today. You've heard different numbers of the total people that were in the OSS. One was 24,000, I think Senator Mitchell mentioned. I've also heard 13,000. The most alarming figure I've heard is that there are only about 100 of us left. So I salute the 20 or so of you who are here this afternoon. Calcutta, India, April 1945. I volunteered for what was described as a dangerous mission. Nothing else was said to me. After some initial vetting in Ceylon, I learned I was in Detachment 404 of the Office of Strategic Services, headed for an airdrop into northern Thailand. In addition to the usual weapons training, we were schooled in the collection of intelligence with the target of Japanese troop movements. The collection of intelligence was relatively new to me, but of great interest, and eventually led to my career in the Central Intelligence Agency. Fortunately for me, the jumping out of an airplane was aborted by the Japanese surrender. Looking back, President Roosevelt's charging of General Donovan's to create an organization capable of gathering intelligence and waging unconventional warfare in enemy-held territories was a necessity for good strategic planning. It's no surprise then that when the National Security Act of 1947 was enacted, it provided for the collection of intelligence by a centralized agency, the Central Intelligence Agency. It is now the 75th anniversary of the OSS, and our intelligence community has expanded exponentially, as have the threats to our great country. The time has come to commemorate those who have brought us to this point with the Museum of Intelligence and Special Operations. That endeavor is underway. In the museum, I hope that there will be a plaque explaining the singular characteristics demanded of those who walk the dangerous corridors of covert operations. Such an officer will ideally have a PhD and be able to hold his own in a bar fight. I think it is now safe to admit that as a 19-year-old high school graduate, an Army PFC who didn't drink and was too small to win a bar fight, that I may not have met these ideal standards. On behalf of my fellow OSS veterans here today and those that couldn't make it, we thank you for the honor bestowed on the Office of Strategic Services, and we thank you for this gold medal. The OSS spearhead continues to point the way forward. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand as the chaplain of the United States House of Representatives, Father Patrick Conroy, gives the benediction.
Let us pray. O Lord our God, we give you thanks for this day as we have remembered the men and women who served our nation and the hope of freedom for all of the world during World War II as founding members of the Office of Strategic Services. The OSS organized, trained, supplied, and fought in the war throughout Europe and Asia, and played a decisive role in America's victory over Axis forces. Comprised of civilians and military branch personnel, their missions resulted in some of the bravest acts of the war and forever changed the course of history. May those who made the ultimate sacrifice, those who etched out historic victories, be assured of this nation's appreciation of their pioneering methods of engaging the enemies of freedom, and may their heroic example inspire patriotic Americans well into our future. Lord, bless all women and men in military service and other service to our country and their families. God, bless America and grant us peace both in the present and with you forever. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain at your seats for the departure of the official party. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's ceremony. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.